This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
The definition of a show trial is a judicial proceeding that takes place when the outcome is already predetermined, because that actually robs the judicial proceeding of its actual goal, which is to find the truth within the context of a process that metes out personal bias and brings forth impartiality to pursue the higher principle of justice. But unfortunately, we just saw the exact opposite happen with the so-called hush money trial of Donald Trump in New York. We saw a trial whose conclusion, according to most people, based on reason, by the way, forget most people, based on reasonable conclusions of the political geography of the area, of the makeup of the jury, of the judge, of the tactics that went on in the trial, whose conclusion was already predetermined before the jury ever left the courtroom to go ahead and deliberate. Donald Trump has been found guilty of several counts of falsifying business documents. Now, many people's opinions on this case are shaped solely by what their politics are. I will not lie to you. I'm right-leaning myself. I am an American conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. But my concerns are primarily not shaped on the basis of my like of Trump or lack thereof or whatever. I do like Trump, but that's besides the point. My opinions are based on the facts that surround the conviction themselves. The fact that Judge Merchan and his daughter, particularly his daughter, raised millions of dollars for a leftist progressive. That Judge Merchan himself is an avowed Democrat who worked for the current head of the Department of Justice. The fact that Judge Merchan did several things during the trial to undermine the actual process of justice, such as reading out an hour or two of jury instructions and then not writing them down on paper so the jurors could actually read them and understand what he is saying, so on and so forth, such as allowing the prosecution to explain the crime that supposedly happened that Trump was being tied to, because the idea was that he falsified business records in pursuit of some crime, but it wasn't elaborated on until after closing arguments actually happened, therefore allowing the defense not to be able to rebut those arguments because the process had actually already ended. Regardless of what it is, there are so many things surrounding this trial that throw the integrity of this trial into question. The fact that the two key witnesses that were deemed credible by the Constitution, by the prosecution, were not credible whatsoever. Michael Cohen, a man who on the stand admitted that he defrauded his old business partner, Donald Trump, is not someone that can be trusted as a credible witness in a case surrounding the falsity of or the truthfulness of a business record. That should be common sense. Stormy Daniels, someone who allegedly had a fling with Donald Trump and who has been at his throat for years, whether it be with her partnership with Michael Avenatti, the sort of ambulance-chasing attorney whose primary affection was popularity and eminence and not truth and reason. How in the world is this person who is so invested in the destruction of someone an impartial witness, a credible witness, in this kind of trial, regardless of the relevance to the supposed details of the trial? There are just so many different things that make this no sense. The jurisdiction of the trial itself was also against the former president. There's a reason why sometimes the home of a trial is moved to different cities to ensure that the jury pool of that particular city is not tainted or biased against the person. And yet that was not a luxury afforded to Donald Trump in this case. The truth is this, my friends. This trial is nothing that surprises anyone who actually understands how the American legal system has run for over 100 plus years. I have mentioned this in several of my media appearances, and I'll mention it now because many pundits are missing this. Many pundits are saying, well, this just shows how corrupt our system is. Well, the problem is, this corruption that you're talking about is not new. And this corruption that you're talking about doesn't come from the source you think it comes from. This corruption that you're talking about is not just people not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It is rather a different ethos that the judicial system in this country reflects and represents. There is a principle called sociological jurisprudence. This is the idea that as a primary matter of law and policy, judges, juries, and legal officials should consider the interest of the community of society and the common good over the principles of justice, reason, and the merits of a particular case. Sociological jurisprudence has brought rise to what is called, or at least it has brought rise to the modern iteration of what is called judicial activism, the idea that the law is a tool that constantly evolves, not a particular policy affixed to broader principles. If the law is a tool that constantly evolves and is tied to the common good, then that means law becomes a sociological, built on a sociological calculus, as opposed to a principled one, which means the aims and goals of a law can change with the whim of who writes them, as opposed to being affixed to a single universal standard. That is the original constitutional version of law, drafted by our founders, rooted in natural law, rooted in objective moral standards, which has been attacked ever since the beginning of the progressive era in the early 20th century, where sociological jurisprudence actually came about. Many of these Trump cases have been almost entirely driven by sociological considerations. And that's just not me speaking. Look at, again, the political affiliations of the people involved in prosecuting him. Look at what they promised to do during their campaign season. Look at what Letitia James promised to do during the campaign season. This is a woman who promised to go after Trump. This is a woman who promised to go after so many people and who also, instead of recusing themselves from their cases like George Santos, continued to stay in the case when the conflict of interest was clear. The truth is, this show trial is merely an extension of what has been happening in America for a very, very long time. It's merely an extension of the reworking and the re-identification of the American legal system towards a progressive ethos as opposed to a decidedly American ethos. And it is merely an extension, my friends, of an unwillingness to wrestle with this social cancer called progressivism, to wrestle with this social cancer called the common good consideration within our culture. So many Americans have an idealized version of their legal system within their mind. So many Americans have an idealized view of what our system should be, or even what it is, or what it was until 20 years ago, without realizing the system has been changed for far more than 20 years ago. This has been a long and sustained process that people are now seeing on a wide scale. The same system that prosecuted Donald Trump for sociological reasons is the same system that imprisoned Ross Ulbricht for running a decentralized marketing mechanism. The same system that prosecuted Donald Trump for sociological reasons is the same system that prosecuted Edward Snowden for telling the truth about what the government was doing behind closed doors in violation of the Constitution. The same system that prosecuted Donald Trump for sociological reasons is the same system that 10 years ago said that Julian Assange should die for daring to expose the schemes of those in power. The same system. It's the same system that uses power, not reason, not principles, not a guiding moral framework, but the considerations of power to make their decisions. It has been like this for a while. Even through our beloved presidents like Reagan, it's been like this. And until we actually face that fact, I'm afraid we're going to have many more cases like these. We're going to have many more people mistreated like President Trump has been. And we're going to have many more kind of crises within the minds of the American people who once thought that the government of their country could be looked up to in a positive way. But there's hope, my friends. There's hope. Because I believe that what's going to happen after this is there's going to be a significant rise in American consciousness. There's going to be a significant rise in the consciousness of Americans in relation to their national identity as Americans, and in a drive to rediscover what it actually means to be a fundamental American. Not just someone who identifies with a few traits like being a patriot, but someone that identifies with an overarching philosophy, an overarching worldview of reality, the idea of natural law, reason as a value, popular sovereignty, consent of the governed, classical republicanism, virtue in society bleeding over to a perfected, refined government. These are fundamentally American attributes that people don't talk about, and those are what made our country the beacon of light in this world of darkness, in this world bound by status, bound by class, bound by so many things that don't actually make good societies, but simply make people in society more powerful and over the innocent in those societies. It is my sincere belief, my friends, that people should not give up hope. It is my sincere belief, rather, that people should push back. This verdict should not affect the decisions of any American in the negative, but rather this verdict against President Trump should encourage all Americans to actually, regardless of their political dispositions, vote in favor of President Trump, just to show the system that what happened today, from now on, will be a one-off, and it will not be forgotten no matter how far time has passed. The second thing we can do other than vote is learn, read, study. Every video I end with study philosophy, study history. That's what must be done in order to ensure that we have a good grasp of our country and we have a good way to deal with these things that does not just lapse into hopelessness, and pessimism that so many people will be embracing over the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. And number three, and this is going to be the most important part, I think, we have to identify the cultural and ideological illnesses like sociological jurisprudence that has entered our institutions for hundreds of years and has corrupted them over that time. And we must be willing to elect people and, in our own ways, use our own powers as citizens of this country to root these ideological illnesses out, purge them, and replace them with good old-fashioned natural law 1776 Americanism. As for me, I'm 24. I have not donated to a presidential campaign in my life. When this video is over, I'm going to go ahead and donate a modest sum to the Trump campaign. Not because I'm a partisan, but because I'm an American. And this cannot be allowed to happen without any friction or corrective from the public. Be the public corrective that a free society and a republic thrives upon. And that way, my friends, I believe that all Americans will be able to restore hope in their system. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can to get our messages out there. If you want to support me, all that information is in the comment section down below. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please, stay pensive.